Good morning and welcome to First Parish, a welcoming Unitarian Universalist congregation, open and affirming of all people. We're glad to see everyone here today, whether you've been coming for decades or are visiting for the first time. I am Nancy Clark, one of the worship associates. Worship today is led by our guest, Matt Meyer. Matt is a musician and a community organizer who has led hundreds of services for UU congregations across the country. He has a degree in hand drumming and serves as director of community life for Sanctuary Boston. Next week, many members of our congregation will join the Louis D. Brown Mother's Day Walk for Peace. We will also be holding our service, Pathways to Peace, here at 11 o'clock. Lacey asked me to remind families that there will be no RE classes next Sunday, but the nursery will be open. After the service today, everyone is invited to join in coffee hour to visit, have conversation, and get to know one another better. Whoever you are, whatever your gifts or abilities may be, however you identify your gender or sexual orientation, wherever your life and journey has taken you, you are welcome here. Welcome to one and all.
These words from Reverend Angela Herrera. Don't leave your broken heart at the door. Bring it to the altar of life. Don't leave your anger behind. It has high standards and the world needs your vision. Bring them with you, and your joy and your passion. Bring your loving and your courage and your conviction. Bring your need for healing and also your power to heal. There is work to do, friends, and you have all that you need to do it right here in this room. For our opening hymn, I'm going to invite you to just sing along on the chorus, which goes like this. Gather your light around. Gather your light around. Gather your light around. Bring all that you are. Let's try that together. Here we go. Gather your light around. Gather your light around. Gather your light around. Bring all that you are. I worship with the Sanctuary Boston on Wednesday evenings, and we invite people to light candles together. And one of the things that we say to each other is that we all show up bringing a light with us when we gather to worship. For some of us, that light is maybe just barely flickering on any given day. For some of us, maybe it's burning bright. But when we gather together, we invite each other's light to grow in this sacred space. So I invite you to sing this song in that spirit. Let's take a deep breath. Invite your whole self in, whether your flame is flickering or burning bright. Gather your light. Here we go. Gather your light around. Gather your light around. Gather your light around. Bring all that you are. Don't leave your broken heart at the door. Don't leave your broken heart at the door. Bring it with you. Bring it with you to the altar of life. Gather, here we go. Gather your light around. Gather your light around. Gather your light around. Bring all that you are. your joy, bring your passion, bring your courage and your conviction. Bring them with you, bring them with you to the altar of life. Gather, here we go. Gather your light around. Gather your light around. Gather your light around. Bring all that you are. Bring your healing and your need to be healed. Bring your healing and your need to be healed. Bring them with you. Bring them with you. There is work here to do. Gather like you mean it this time. Here we go. Gather your light around. Can we get some more harmonies? Gather your light around. Gather your light around. Bring all. A little bit louder. Gather your light. Here we go. Gather your light around. Gather your light around. Gather your light around. Bring all that you are. One more time. Here we go. Gather your light around. Gather your light around. Gather your light around. Bring all that you are. Bring all that. Bring all that you are. 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 One last time. Bring all that you are. Let's take another breath together. You may be seated as you exhale.
At this time, I would like to invite Ann Modena and Harriet Koch to come forward to light the chalice, symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith the world over. As they light the chalice, please join me in our unison affirmation printed in your order of service in English and then in Spanish. We give ourselves one unto another, covenanting to walk together as a congregation, promising faithfully to watch over one another and to delight for love to abide in our midst. Nos entregamos y nos comprometemos a caminar juntos como congregación, prometiendo con mucha fe cuidarnos mutuamente y deleitarnos en el amor que permanecerá entre nosotros. Each week, we also light 2 candles of peace, each candle representing a different place on earth that we want to lift up and remember this morning as a sacred encounter with the world. Today, we remember 2 places that we especially hold close in this service and through the week ahead. After each of the candles is lit, we will speak the words for peace in English, Arabic, and Hebrew. Peace, salam, shalom. A candle of peace is lit for the University of North Carolina, where 2 students died in yet another horrific shooting rampage this week. Peace, salam, shalom. A candle of hope is lit for the earth, where countless student activists worldwide are demanding solutions to climate change, and soon they will be old enough to vote. Peace, salam, shalom. And now we invite our children to come forward for the time for all ages.
I'd like to share with you all a story called Desmond the Mouse. Now, Desmond lived in the most beautiful meadow in all of the land. Every morning, Desmond would awake at sunrise and spend the entire day playing in that beautiful meadow. And every night, he would go to sleep under the beautiful starry sky. One night, though, Desmond awoke, and it was not sunrise. He looked up and he saw the stars still in the dark sky. He tried to roll over and go back to sleep again, but something was wrong. He realized that, he couldn't roll over, and in fact, he was stuck. He tried to move around again, but he couldn't get anywhere. He felt behind him, and some kind of huge boulder had pinned his tail, and he couldn't move an inch. Well, he pushed on this boulder behind him, and he tugged on his tail, and he pushed on the boulder, and he tugged on his tail, and he pushed and tugged until he was out of breath and exhausted and just about to give up, when a giraffe started to pass by. "Oh, Giraffe," he said, "if you could help me out. It seems that this boulder has fallen just on my tail in the middle of the meadow. If you could just nudge it a little bit in the other direction, I could go free." Well, the giraffe laughed at Desmond the way giraffes do. "You silly mouse," he said. "That's no boulder on your tail. That is an elephant that has fallen asleep just on your tail in the middle of the meadow." Well, this is good news, thought Desmond. If you could just wake him up and have him roll over just a few inches in the other direction, I could go free. You know what they say about letting sleeping elephants lie. "I find it's best not to get involved in other people's business," said the giraffe. "I find it's best to remain neutral in situations like this." Well, Desmond said, "I do not appreciate your neutrality." The giraffe went on its way, and Desmond, again, he tried to call out to the elephant. He called out to wake him up and ask him to roll over just a few inches in the other direction, but as loud as he yelled, those giant elephant ears on the other side of that giant elephant body were just too far away. And then he pushed on the elephant to push him over, and he tugged on his tail, and he pushed and tugged, but it was no use. Just when he had just about given up, a gazelle walked by. "Oh, gazelle," he called out, "it seems an elephant has fallen asleep just on my tail in the middle of the meadow. If you could just get him to roll over just a few inches in the other direction, wake him up, and I could finally go free." "Well," said the gazelle, "you know what they say about letting sleeping elephants lie. I find it's best not to get involved in other people's problems. I find it's best just to remain neutral." Well, you know what Desmond said? "I do not appreciate your neutrality." Well, the gazelle went on its way. And for the last time, Desmond called out to the elephant. He pushed on the backside of that elephant, and he pulled on his tail over and over again until he was exhausted for what felt like the last time, when he saw another mouse walk by. He called out, "Oh, mouse, if you could help me out. It seems that this elephant has fallen asleep just on my tail in the middle of this meadow." Well, this mouse came over and introduced himself as Nelson. He said, I think I've got an idea." Well, he first went over and he tried to wake up the elephant, but even running to the other side, those giant elephant ears on top of that giant elephant head, it was just no use. So Nelson came back. He said to Desmond, "I think I've got an idea. Stay right here." "Okay," said Desmond. "I'm on it." Well, Nelson ran off, and he came back a little while later with 3 other mouse friends, and each of them had found another 3 mouse friends. They ran all the way around the other side of that giant elephant body, and then they built a little mouse ladder, each on top of the shoulders of the other and the other and the other, and they crawled up the way up that giant elephant head. So Nelson eventually was able to crawl up the back of all of his friends, and he called out into that giant elephant ear, "Excuse me, it seems that you've fallen asleep on my friend's tail in the middle of the meadow. If you could just roll over a few inches in the other direction, he could go free." The elephant said, but then he rolled over just a few inches in the other direction. Nelson crawled back down, and Desmond and Nelson and all of their mouse friends spent the whole rest of that day playing together in the middle of that beautiful meadow. Now, Archbishop Desmond Tutu once said that if you say you are neutral in situations of injustice, you are a liar and you have taken sides with the powerful, with the oppressor. He said, if there's an elephant standing on the tail of a mouse, the mouse will never appreciate your neutrality. What I love about congregations and communities like this is we come together to speak about the values that are most important and to figure out how together we can change the world around us in ways we couldn't do on our own. We decide to take action, to speak out for what matters, even when it's complicated, even when it's messy, even when we often have more questions than answers about what the next step is. But when we trust in our community, when we trust that we can figure it out together, we can take that action and make this world a better place. So thank you all for helping me with the story.
Our oldest kids are going to stay in worship today, so if you're in neighboring faiths or older, you are invited to stay in worship, and the rest of us are going to class, all right? So let's head to class as the congregation sings. What was that? What class are you in?
Let's take another breath together and take a moment to be present in this space made sacred by our showing up to be together. Take a deep breath and be present in this time. There is nothing to be done but to be here, fully here. Let's breathe and be present in our bodies. Our holy, fragile, and beautiful bodies. Spirit of love that is within us and between us. Be with us as we are with each other this morning. We gather bringing our whole selves. We bring our broken hearts with us. We have brought our joy and our passion. We have brought courage. We have brought conviction. Be with us as we show up for ourselves and for each other. Be with us as we bring our whole stories. Be with us when we have more questions than answers. Be with us as we are with each other, even when the path forward is unclear, even when we stumble on the way. Spirit of love, be with us as we are with each other in the song and in the silence. Let's join together in a shared silence. blessed be.
The offering will now be gratefully received. If you're visiting First Parish for the first time today, please feel free to let the basket pass you by.
Could we do a reading first?
I'm sorry?
Could we do a reading first?
Please.
But hold that idea of offertory. It's a great idea.
Only 2 seconds, I promise. I Am Living a Life I Don't Regret by Adrienne Marie Brown. Let us measure success by how many of us feel and can say, I am living a life I don't regret. A life that will resonate with my ancestors and with as many generations forward as I can imagine. I am attending to the crises of my time with my best self. I am of communities that are doing our collective best to honor our ancestors and all humans to come.
Sorry about that. The offering will now be gratefully received.
Oye, mi gente, traemos la fuerza. La libertad es la única bandera. Oye, mi gente, traemos la fuerza. La libertad es la única bandera. Listen, my people, my condor, my eagle. No human being can ever be illegal. Listen, my people, my condor, my eagle. No human being can ever be illegal. Oye, mi gente, traemos la fuerza. La libertad es la única bandera. Listen, my people, my condor, my eagle. No human being can ever be illegal. Oye, mi gente, traemos la fuerza. La libertad es la única bandera. Listen, my people, my condor, my eagle. No human being can ever be illegal. No human being can ever be illegal. No human being can ever be illegal.
For these gifts which you have given and all that you have given, we are truly grateful, and we say thank you. This is what you missed that day you were absent from 4th grade. Mrs. Nelson explained how to stand still and listen to the wind, how to find meaning in pumping gas, how peeling potatoes can be a form of prayer. She took questions on how not to feel lost in the dark. After lunch, she distributed worksheets that covered ways to remember your grandfather's voice. Then the class discussed falling asleep without feeling you had forgotten to do something else, something important, and how to believe the house you wake in is your home. This prompted Mrs. Nelson to draw a chalkboard diagram detailing how to chant the Psalms during cigarette breaks, and how not to squirm for sound when your own thoughts are all that you hear. Also, that you have enough. The English lesson was that I am is a complete sentence. And just before the afternoon bell, she made the math equation look easy. The one that proves that hundreds of questions and feeling cold and all those nights spent looking for whatever you lost and one person add up to something.
Sweet Spirit, sweet Spirit, take over this place, take over this place. I'll invite you to sing each of those lines just right after I do. Let's try it together. Here we go. Sweet Spirit, sweet Spirit, sweet Spirit, sweet Spirit, take over this place, take over this place, take over this place, take over this sweet Spirit, sweet Spirit, sweet Spirit, take over this place, take over this place, take over this place, take over this place. Loving Spirit, loving Spirit, loving Spirit, loving Spirit, take over this place, take over this place, take over this place. Now, we're doing a lot of singing this morning, and I invite you to do that in whatever way feels best for you. If the words elude you and you just want to hum along, that's just as good. If you want to just be silent and soak in the sound of the room, that's just as good. And if you want to rock out like you're alone in the car with the radio, this is also your morning to do that. I invite you to rise and body our spirit. And let's sing together. Here we go. Sweet Spirit, sweet Spirit, sweet Spirit, sweet Spirit, take over this place, take over this place, take over this place. Sweet Spirit, sweet Spirit, take over this place. Take over this place, loving Spirit, loving Spirit, take over this place, take over this place, healing Spirit, healing Spirit, take over this place, take over this place, mighty Spirit, mighty Spirit, take over this place, 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 sweet Spirit, sweet Spirit, take over this place, take over this place, take over this place. Take another breath. You may be seated as you exhale and set the song down gently. I grew up just outside of Chicago and moved to Boston in 2000 to attend college and get a degree in hand drumming, of all things. I was following my dream of being a touring musician, traveling around the world, a different city on every night of the week. And I remember in my last semester at school, I was preparing for graduation, excited and terrified about the musician's life ahead of me. On one morning, I stepped into a classroom where two of my professors were speaking with each other. One of them was talking about his schedule. He'd just finished a 2-week concert tour of Morocco with some incredible Middle Eastern group. And he was just the next day about to head off on a 4-week tour of Europe with a group called Simon and Garfunkel. Perhaps you've heard of them? He pointed at his suitcase, which was sitting there open in the corner of the classroom. This guy was living the dream. Could there be a more perfect life than this? I asked him, "Are you so freaking excited that you can't even stand it?" I asked him just like that. "Man," he said, shaking his head, "I just want to go home and see my kid." In addition to his tour schedule, he commuted to Boston from Ohio. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. In that moment, I didn't say it, but what I really thought was, surely your kid is not as cool as Simon and Garfunkel. But I was embarrassed by how tone-deaf I'd been to this conversation that they were having. That open suitcase had just a minute ago been the ultimate sign of success. But for me, the very meaning of success had shifted in that moment, and that open suitcase meant something very different now. It carried a different weight. The reality of this man's life was more complex than I had realized, and that suitcase, which carried such a different meaning for him than it had for me, was part of that story. This guy knew the value of music as much as anyone I have ever met, but he still struggled to balance that dedication to music with the value of his family and his relationships. My unfolding sense of true success, of a life well lived, is that it is first of all a journey and not a destination, and that it is second an increasing embrace of our values, even in the face of increasing complexity. This reminds me of a poem by Naomi Shihab Nye, which says, "The boot is famous to the earth, more famous than the dress shoe, which is only famous to floors. I want to be famous the way a pulley is famous, or a buttonhole, not because it did anything spectacular, but because it never forgot what it could do." Remembering what we can do in the midst of all that must be done is the work of we, the future ancestors. If you agree, would you say out loud right now, future ancestors? Still with me? Rabbi Tarfon spoke of this in the 1st century AD, saying, "It is not your responsibility to finish the work of perfecting the world, but you are not free to desist from it either." Now, millennials have coined the useful term adulting to name the daily successes of small things, to celebrate the days when one accomplishes both the shopping of the groceries and the laundering of the laundry. But we in congregations like this one, who covenant to live for justice and equity and compassion, we know that success in its true sense is more than checking off to-do lists. It's more even than professional acclaim. My hope for my days, and for yours, is to attend to the complexity of our time with our best selves, to root ourselves in communities that are doing our best to attend to the crises of our time. This is the work of we, the future ancestors. My hope is for us to set aside the simplistic stories we've been told about who we are and who we're meant to be, setting aside the stories we made up along the way about what success is supposed to look like, to set aside the stories of what our gender is supposed to mean, of what kind of work has value enough, or whether systems of injustice are tolerable just because they are normal. Growing up at any age is about growing into our values, about adapting to change with grace and with courage, about remembering what we can do in the midst of all that must be done. Now, when I think of redefining success, that it might align more deeply with our values, when I think of movement ancestors who lived into the complexity of their times, I sometimes remember this story about our Unitarian ancestor, William Ellery Channing. Now, Channing was a preacher in Boston in the mid-1800s, and he is remembered as one of the great founders of Unitarianism. He is hailed as a model of religious leadership, dedicated to justice, and he was a powerful voice for abolition in his time. But we know that success is more about the journey than the destination, and that was certainly true of our friend Will, who wasn't always so vocal in his opposition to slavery. While he agreed with the goals of the abolitionists, Channing was put off by their overwhelming passion, which reminded him too much of the emotional, itinerant revivalists of the time. Now, you should know that the only constant thing in my life since college is my job as an itinerant revivalist. It's okay, I try not to take his comments too personally. So one night at a forum, Samuel May, a more active abolitionist, had been listening all evening to Will's criticisms and complaints about the movement, and unable finally to control his temper any longer, he broke out. "Dr. Channing," he said, "I am tired of these complaints. It is not our fault that those who might have conducted this great reform so much more prudently than us have left us to manage as we may. It is not our fault that those who might have pleaded for the enslaved so much more wisely and eloquently than we have been silent. We are not to blame, sir, that you have not spoken. And now that inferior men have begun to speak and act against what you acknowledge to be an awful system, it is not becoming in you to complain that we do it in an inferior style." This is what the kids would call a sick burn. So sick, in fact, that Channing, unable to answer the rebuke, changed his mind right there and then, saying, "Brother May, I have been silent too long." I invite you, if you've ever struggled with this kind of realization in your own life, to just say out loud right now, "I've been silent too long."
I've been silent too long.
Certainly true for me. I love that the story depicts the very moment that Channing took up the work of a life that would resonate with his ancestors. The work of attending to the crises of his time, not to finish it, but neither to desist from it. To take on the work that was his to do despite the complexity of working with imperfect people in an imperfect world. I love this story because so often I feel in the place of Samuel, where I end up fighting so-called allies who theoretically share my values, but would rather criticize from afar than get scuffed up in the fray. And I love this story also because I'm just as often in Channing's place, where I've blamed other people's failings for my own silence, and I delay action, leaving some of my human family to suffer for the sake of some abstract sense of moral purity. Perhaps Channing had missed that day in school when the teacher explained that the hundreds of questions we have about how to go about our days still add up to something, even when simplistic answers are elusive. Our children will someday tell similar stories of us. Stories of the time when the world was changing fast, when climate chaos arrived with devastation in our cities and neighborhoods, and premeditated wealth inequality made it hard to address it. They will tell of the time when we put our neighbors in cages by the millions for nonviolent offenses, and of the time when we had institutionalized segregation by continuing to fund schools with local taxes based on segregated wealth. But our children will also tell the stories of Black Lives Matter, and of Me Too, and of the Sunrise Movement, of the future ancestors that changed how the story ends, that came together even when the people were complicated and even when the path was unclear, those that covenanted to never forget what they could do. The work of future ancestors is a journey and not a destination. And true success is an increasing embrace of our values, even in the face of an increasingly complex world. Writer and atheist prophet Ta-Nehisi Coates spoke of this. He said, "History is not solely in our hands, and still you are called to struggle. Not because it assures you victory, but because it assures you an honorable and a sane life." If you agree, would you say out loud, honorable struggle?
Honorable struggle.
There was a time I believed that success was traveling the world with a famous band. And the truth is that if Simon and Garfunkel called me up today, I'd be on the next plane tomorrow. But now I also think success is finding a way to support your family even when the minimum wage is too low and healthcare costs are too high. And success is nurturing the people who love you and finding ways to make the world better even when there are more questions than answers. Love, which is the beginning and the end of the story of Unitarian Universalism, is acting for compassion and for justice even when the people are complicated and the path is unclear. An honorable struggle is taking up the work that is ours to do, not to finish it, but neither to desist from it. Beloveds, let us live deeply into the journey we will not regret, aspiring to the fame of the boot and the buttonhole, never forgetting what we can do. Let's love each other deeply, building up the messy and beautiful and holy communities that make this life worth celebrating. May it be so. So our closing song was written by Bernice Johnson Regan, one of the SNCC freedom singers in the 60s and then the founder of Sweet Honey in the Rock. And she wrote this song, We Are the Ones, when she was inspired by a poem of the same name by June Jordan. And June Jordan wrote that poem to honor the women of South Africa that protested against the apartheid regime. So we'll sing the song in honor of them and in honor of all of those today still working to dismantle apartheid wherever we find it. There are 3 parts in this edited version that we're going to do. You ready? First part goes like this. We are the ones, we've been waiting. Let's try that. We are the ones, we've been waiting. Part 2. We are the ones, we've been waiting. Let's try that. We are the ones, we've been waiting. Part 3. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the ones we've been waiting for. Please rise in body or spirit. We'll start with part 1, then we'll add part 2 and part 3. You sing whichever one you like best. Switch back and forth between them. If you're more inspired by parts 4, 5, or 8, go ahead and make up your own, because this is yours to do. Are you ready? Here we go. We are the ones, we've been waiting. We are the ones, we've been waiting. Keep going. We are the ones, We've been waiting, yeah. We are the ones, we are the ones. We've been waiting, beautiful. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the ones we've been waiting. A little bit louder, here we go. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the ones we've been waiting for. Is that a little more rhythm? We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the ones. Can we face the center of the room? That's where the action is. Here we go. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the ones we've been waiting. Now sing out like you sing in the shower. Here we go. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the ones we've been waiting. 4 more times. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the ones, we are the ones we've been waiting. Last one. We are the ones, we are the ones we've been waiting. You sound good.
As Reverend Lisa extinguishes this chalice, please join me in our unison affirmation. We extinguish the flame and not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry with us and offer as gifts unto the world.
Now please take the hand or touch the elbow or shoulder of the person next to you for the benediction.
Beloveds, may we future ancestors go forth in honorable struggle. Even when simplistic answers are elusive, may we go forth increasingly embracing our values, even in the face of an increasingly complex world. Go forth aspiring to the fame of the boot and of the buttonhole, remembering always what we might do, what is ours to do, in the midst of all that must be done. Go in peace, go in love, and go and be blessed as you are a blessing to others. Amen.
Amen.